Welcome back, everybody. I'm Conley Woods. This is TCGplayer.com. This week, we're bringing you a bit of a brew that is attempting to look forward into new standards. Obviously, Kaladesh spoilers are kind of coming out right now. We're still early on in the spoiler season. Not even half the set is known yet. But what we do know is that very soon we're going to be losing a couple of sets. We're going to be losing Magic Origins, as well as Dragons of Tarkir. And because of that, I wanted to kind of explore some brews that might have wings going forward, things that either don't use any cards from the older sets or they use very few. So this particular list, we're using basically one old card, ignoring sideboard or mana base stuff that we can easily change. Really, the only card that we're using that is going to rotate is Shambling Ghoul, which is very easily replaceable. I actually have the 2-drop zombies that we know about pulled up here. We can replace them with basically anything from Rancid Rats to a Wailing Ghoul to a Screeching Scab, which I think is my top getter. But we can even replace it with a Shaman Goblin. The point is mostly that it is not a super essential card in the deck. I'm trying it out because I do feel like it's probably the strongest available 2-drop right now. A 2/3 for 2 is reasonable. Comes into play tapped, which is frustrating with Crypt Breaker, but we'll see if that matters. That said, outside of that, this deck is legal going forward. So the idea being, can we get a shell that looks solid? Maybe picks up some new toys in Kaladesh. Almost certainly picks up some new toys in Kaladesh. There's blue and black cards obviously in the set, and there's going to be some blue and black cards that are standard viable. That whether they're removal or counter spells or zombies themselves, anything like that would obviously make a deck like this better. Let's look at the deck. It's a tribal deck, obviously, so pretty linear in terms of what we're going to be doing. Pretty linear in terms of what tools we're going to be picking out. But at the same time, it's an interesting deck that not a lot of people are playing. There's multiple zombie lords or things that care about zombies from the last couple sets. So let's give it a shot. Let's at least take it for a test drive, and then we'll figure out if it's real or if it's too gimmicky and it ultimately falls apart. So right off the bat, one of those zombie lords happens to be a 1-drop. Happens to be probably my favorite card in the deck in terms of conceptually. Drawing extra cards and being a draw engine that is also the Lord is just sweet to me. I don't know why. Like, this is not going to give you any stat boosts. Obviously, you're not getting +1/+1 to your zombies. You will make additional zombies from this, so you're getting stats that way. But just being able to fuel up, be reasonable against control, draw you cards when you're a little bit stuck on mana, or you just need to get a specific thing going, like a from under the floorboard, just something like that. This is one of my favorite cards in Limited. I have like 30 copies of it, and ultimately it was like, hey, let's try zombies out specifically because of this card. It's our only 1-drop. It often acts like a 1-drop and a 2-drop because of its ability. In the 2-drop slot, we have those Shambling Ghouls I talked about. Just pure rate, comes into play tapped, makes it not work with Crypt Breaker, as I mentioned, but outside of that, pretty sweet. Then we have Relentless Dead here. Really no reason to not include this in a zombie deck. We have a pretty strong mana base that every single land taps for black except for these 2 Westville Abbeys, which we'll get to in a little bit. So we can cast him basically on turn 2 every single game. 2/2 Menace, so already upside. When he dies, you pay black to return it back to your hand. Great. Can't complain about that. Returning 2/2 zombie. That means we can re-trigger our Diagraph Colossus over and over again. We can also just have extra cards in our hand for Crypt Breaker if we need to, whatever it need be. And then his next ability is great for multiple reasons. So he returns a zombie to play when he dies if you want to pay X colorless, in addition to his other Raised Dead. That obviously is great in our deck because we have a bunch of zombies, but it also triggers Prized Amalgam, which is a 3-mana 3/3 that comes back whenever any other creature comes back from your graveyard. So the ways we have to trigger this, naturally at least, are Relentless Dead's ability of bringing back another zombie, a Haunted Dead, which we'll get to in a little bit, and Giza and Gerolf, which are it's much less reliable, but it is technically an out. But Relentless Dead, more importantly, since we're on 2-drops right now, he just serves all these roles. Very good in the late game, fine on turn 2, and just to beat down. He's not obviously not your favorite 2-drop. You'd rather go Crypt Breaker activation or the 2/3. Both those are probably stronger 2-drop plays. But if you don't have either of those, a 2-mana 2/2 Menace is perfectly fine. We are fairly aggressive in nature just because we're a sort of curved out creature-based deck, so we're just going to be sort of aggressive based on that. But our games can also go long, and that's where this guy's suite of abilities come in super handy, and we're just rebuying all of our zombies and putting a bunch of stuff into play. And just great in all phases of the game, and that's why he's awesome. And it's kind of one of the zombie lords, not necessarily a lord, but he just really incentivizes zombie play. Spells, we have a couple different ones here. 2 Collective Brutalities, the Swiss Army knife of spells in Standard right now. Just awesome all around. We can discard stuff like Prized Amalgams to the kicker. We can also discard anything with Madness, which we don't have a lot of in this deck. I think the only thing we have is from under the floorboards in our main deck, but we do have more of those in the sideboard. But also discarding Haunted Dead, which is not really a Madness card, but it's a card that wants to be in your graveyard, or anything just to fuel up a Diagraph Colossus or something is perfectly fine too. And then we have a couple compelling deterrents here, which you really only ever want to play when it's kicked, of course, but in our deck it's almost always kicked. And it's just a great instant speed way to deal with any permanent. You can deal with Planeswalkers, which helps us not have to run like Ruinous Path in our main deck or anything like that. You can, just all around, I think, just super good utility. I only have 2 of it because it doesn't deal with a card permanently necessarily, and there is enough stuff running around with enough decks running around with Madness spells like Fiery Temper and stuff. You can't necessarily just go willy-nilly throwing this out, bouncing something, and expecting not to get punished. But that all said, its versatility, its instant speed nature, it's relatively cheap, and it is a zombie-only card, so you're not really going to ever get to test this in other decks. So you might as well give it a shot in your zombie deck, see kind of what it has to offer. Another Zombie Lord up next in the 3-drop slot. This one's a true Zombie Lord. He's getting gigantic for every zombie in your graveyard, and he's making more zombies for every zombie you cast after him. Again, a great zombie card. There's so much synergy. We've already looked at 3 different zombie synergy-based cards, not to mention the compelling deterrence, which is kicker, effectively. But already a bunch of reasons to play zombies. It just feels like a natural deck to at least explore. Again, all of this stuff goes through into the new standard, so might as well test it out. 4 Prized Amalgams, 3-mana, 3/3, pretty simple there. Mostly playing it for its ability to just give you a ton of value with Haunted Dead, give you a ton of value with Relentless Dead, give you some value with Giza and Geralf, I guess. And yeah, you sometimes just plays a 3-mana, 3/3, and that's totally fine too. Not much else to say here. But what we do have something to say is about Liliana. So Liliana is obviously extremely, extremely powerful. In our deck, we're an aggressive deck, so being able to shrink down a creature's power and attack past it is huge, because usually that's going to force a chump block or at least protect Liliana on the backswing. She's also going to kill a bunch of creatures with just the -1 toughness part. The -2 returning key cards like Diagraph Colossus or Crypt Breaker can be huge, but also the mill ability just helps out those very same cards, or helps out a Giza and Geralf, or helps out a Haunted Dead, or helps out a Prized Amalgam. So she just kind of synergizes all around with those both abilities. And then her ultimate makes a ton of zombies. We don't really need to take advantage of that, but if you've played Standard, you know that Liliana's ultimate is a real thing. She will just +1 4 times, and then ultimate, like that happens. That is a real thing that she does. And in our deck, the starting point for her ultimate just is 10 already or whatever, and she just goes off and wins the game basically 1 turn. So certainly a real thing in our deck. We can sit behind a million zombies and just play the Crypt Breaker game and pump up Liliana, and that is a more than reasonable strategy. So she is a key card in our deck because she kind of changes the way that our deck plays, goes from aggro to control very easily, or we can use her to be aggressive too. Her +1 ability, like I said, helps with an aggressive game plan just as much. 4-drop slot, 4 Haunted Dead. Zombie, make spirits, discard outlet, instant speed. Graveyard enabling thing for Prized Amalgams, just all around awesomeness. Gives us a flyer, gives us multiple bodies for Westville Abbies, which again I'll get to in a second. Just nothing else to say about the card. Just super. You've seen this in Standard a million times. It looks very innocuous, but just a great card. Giza and Geralf I'm trying as a one of. Not a zombie itself. It's a human wizard, which is a little weird. But it will mill you for 4, which enables itself and does all kinds of other stuff in our deck, as I've gone over multiple times. And then whenever you can cast 1 zombie per turn from your yard, which is pretty good against control, pretty good against any type of mid-range strategy. It's not necessarily the best against aggro. Again, it's a 1 over the main deck. I'm mostly just giving it a shot. I do have a second win in the sideboard against control to grind out kind of like longer games against wraths and things of that nature. But yeah, I'm just giving it a chance. It's not actually a zombie, but it has enough synergy with the deck that I figured, let's give it a chance. Let's give it a shot. Also, look at that art. It's kind of sweet. I don't know. I dig it. One from under the floorboards. I had more of these in the main deck, but I wanted to add more lands. I'm up to 23 lands. I played 2 games with this deck so far, prior to the recorded ones. And I'm 1-1, and I wanted to add some lands really badly, so I went and cut from under the floorboards. If I wanted to add another land, it would probably cut the Giza and Geralf because it is just kind of experimental. And it's possible you want to cut like something like Compelling Deterrence and add another from under the floorboards. But right now I just moved to the sideboard, focus on being more aggressive and using this kind of as plan B, at least in game 1. In game 2 it could be your plan A very easily. But it gives you a bunch of zombies, gives you life, which is great against aggro and mid-range. The Madness is relevant with Crypt Breakers some amount of the time, especially when you're flooded. Madness is relevant with Haunted Dead whenever you need instant speed, surprise factor. Solid card all around. There'd probably be more in the deck if Dark Salvation didn't get printed, which is right here, and we're going to talk about next. But Dark Salvation is kind of your mass zombie maker that you're really going to run 4 of because it's just so good as removal. You pay 3 mana in this deck, you get a 2/2 and a removal spell that kills anything. Often 1 mana will get you a removal spell that kills anything. You, of course, will spend more mana on this than you can to get additional 2/2s just because how strong they are on your deck. But you could very easily just like Dark Salvation something, kill a creature, attack for 5 or 6 or whatever, untap Westville Abby them. Like that is a very, very real line. Again, another zombie synergy card, a great one at that, and one of the main reasons to be playing the deck along with Crypt Breaker, in my personal opinion. So we'll definitely keep our eye on this. I suspect it will be insane. All right, the mana base, pretty straightforward. All the black-blue duels, Choked Estuary, Submerged Boneyard, and Sunken Hollow. You theoretically could run Evolving Wilds over Submerged Boneyard because Evolving Wilds will turn on your Sunken Hollows. However, Evolving Wilds gets you one or the other, which means that you basically always have to get a swamp with it. So they're essentially always going to be swamps unless you really, really need an island. But in that case, I would just rather have some more Submerged Boneyard. You play it on turn 1. You play your swamp on turn 2. You play your Relentless Dead. On turn 3, it doesn't matter what land you play. You have access to Compelling Deterrence or Prized Amalgam. And I think that's pretty nice. So just going to run 4 of these over Evolving Wilds just seems correct. We also don't have any Delirium or anything of that nature. And then we have 2 Westville Abbeys. Because our mana base is close enough to monocolored, you can see a very light blue touch here. Only 7 cards in the main deck that are blue, and then another 5 cards or 6 cards in the sideboard that are blue. But we get away with 2 Westville Abbeys, which is a real card in our deck for multiple reasons. 1, Crypt Breaker works excellently with it. 2, Haunted Dead works pretty well with it. Gives you 2 bodies at least. Diregraph Colossus gives you a bunch of bodies. Relentless Dead gives you some number of bodies. Dark Salvation and From Under the Floorboards both give you bodies. And Giza and Geralf can give you multiple bodies. Plus, it makes creatures on its own. And like I said, it's very low cost for us. I expect to win some number of games with this. If I play 100 games, I'm probably going to win 3 or 4 games with this. I don't think it's going to be like the premier star of the deck. But there are just going to be plenty of games where you just stall out and you're just building up a bunch of creatures, waiting for something to break through, and Westville Abbey will be that thing. And again, it's just very, very low cost to run a couple of them, so why not? Sideboard is not too exciting. It's pretty straightforward, actually. We have our anti-control stuff. Duresses, Negates, and 2 more Collective Brutality, which kind of acts like Duress. We use the instant or sorcery discard ability. But it also comes in against aggro decks because it's -2/-2, and it's lose 2 life. We could theoretically just have 4 of these in the main deck, but I would rather give Compelling Deterrence a shot because it is pretty versatile. And there's a lot of decks that the -2/-2 is just not great against. So, it theoretically could be in the sideboard and not come in for some matchups. But yeah, everything here just made to deal with Wraths and annoying Planeswalkers and stuff of that nature. 3 Kaladesh for his lifesteal, or for his lifelink, excuse me. His exile ability is great against a couple of decks, of course. And then we are playing a zombie deck, so his sacrifice ability works for basically everything except for Giza and Geralf. So you could sacrifice all those tokens, everything. He gets gigantic quickly. I actually think he could make the main deck very easily, especially in the right metagame. Like we could cut Shambling Ghouls and play this or something. But right now I'm leaving him in the sideboard. We'll bring him in probably pretty often. Great card, one of my favorites in Standard. Play him in all my sideboards. 2 from under the floorboards. We already talked about it, but it's going to come in against your aggro decks where you play more of a control role. But it also could come in against any deck where you're trying to play the instant speed, surprise you with a bunch of bodies against like a Wrath heavy decks and stuff like that. So it's kind of versatile. And it could be in the main deck if we wanted to add a few more lands and go a little bit slower, which I think is a reasonable direction to take the deck. 2 in Prison of the Moon. Kind of our Oblivion Ring. This could theoretically be Ruinous Path as well. I don't know if it should be Ruinous Path or not, but I figure we're playing blue. We might as well give this a chance at least. We'll give it a shot and see if we enjoy it or not. And then 1 more Gisa and Jeroth for Against Control. Again, another card I'm not too certain about, but I'm willing to give it a chance for the same reason it's in the main deck. It's basically there's a second one over here. So we'll test it out against Control and see where it lands. But yeah, this is blue-black zombies. Like I said, basically everything in here is staying with us going forward. So that's mostly the main reason I want to test the list. Also, it's pretty fun. And the 2 games I played with it were hit or miss. I only had 22 lands the first game I played, and I definitely got mana screwed. And I quickly added a 23rd land and cut it from under the floorboards. But 23 is about as low as I probably should have gone anyway, so we'll give that a chance. The deck's curve is not actually too bad, with a lot of 2s and a lot of 3s. And Crypt Breaker can, of course, draw you extra cards. And Dark Salvation is not really an X spell. Like you can cast it for 1 or 3 mana. And then, so if you rule all that out, so if I grab like this, move it over here, for example, you only have these 6 cards that have 4 or more cost, and the Haunted Deads are things you want to discard, which then have a cost of 2. Then you have this Madness card, so you can theoretically get it down for as cheap as 3 mana, although in order to do that you have to pay other mana, so that's kind of a lie. And then you have Gisa and Jeroth, which is, you know, not essential to the deck at all, theoretically could be cut, and maybe I shouldn't even be playing with it. So even though, you know, 23 lands is pretty low for most standard decks, I think we might be able to get away with it because this is kind of what our curve actually looks like. And these theoretically are even free. They're not actually free. I don't know why I grabbed all those, but those theoretically are free. So they like go somewhere over here. And when that is our curve, you're like, oh, that makes sense. But then that's kind of a lie, like I said, because we have Dark Salvation, which scales up. We have Collective Brutality, which discards lands. We have Relentless Dead, which spends a bunch of mana to get stuff back. We have Crypt Breaker discarding lands. We have this casting stuff. We have this with the Big Madness. So, like I said, it's kind of all a lie, but we can get away with a few lands. So I'm trying a few lands. You know, I'm sure I'll get punished. we'll all get punished together and get mana screwed and enjoy life. You know, zombie style. So for TCGplayer.com, we'll be right back for round 1 with our blue-black zombies deck. Yep, Conley Woods. Be right back.